Hey everybody, Scott Weichel. You're listening to My Kind of Country right here on Fish Creek Radio. 2017 marks the 50th year for my guest tonight as a member of the Grand Ole Opry, and it's also going to be a big year for her because she has a brand new album coming out entitled Written in Song. It's got some of the greatest songs that she has written in her career, and she's got some fabulous guest artists on it as well. And she is here with us tonight. We're going to talk about that new album, and we're also going to talk about her stellar career in country music. It's my honor to welcome Jeannie Seeley to My Kind of Country. Jeannie, how are you tonight?
I'm doing great, Scott, and thank you for inviting me by to be a part of your show and maybe be able to visit with all the fans listening in a little bit.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you on the show, and I appreciate Carrie and at Third Coast Talent for getting us in touch, and it was awful nice of you to take time.
Always happy to do that, and I'm excited about the coming year because it will be a really great year for me. I cannot wrap my head around the fact that I've been a member of the Grand Ole Opry for 50 years. That just can't be. I've had such a wonderful ride. If it ends tomorrow, it's been wonderful. We hope it doesn't.
Well, absolutely. I was trying to figure that out too, because you're only 39, right?
Yeah, right. It's amazing, isn't it?
I know it.
You're my buddy already.
Well, let me talk about the Grand Ole Opry a little bit. Tell me the circumstances on how you became a member. This is going back to 1967.
Well, you have to be invited to be a member of the Grand Ole Opry. And I think the criteria maybe through the years changed some. I don't know, with different management regimes. But I do know that when I became a member, Don't Touch Me had been released and was climbing the charts. And I was on the road at that time with Porter Wagner's show. And I remember they would call me every week and tell me where the record moved up in the national charts, the Billboard charts and all. And I'm like, that's great, but did Mr. Devine call? Because Art Devine was the manager of the Grand Ole Opry then. And I wanted so much to be a part of the Opry. It's been a part of my life, my whole life. I've listened to the Opry. And so finally one day, Hal Smith, who had the agency I was booking through, finally said, well, that's a big commitment. And he said, you make sure that you really will do it and honor the Opry and that you will stay with it. If you promise me that, I'll go to bat for you. But he said, I have done that for some other artists, and they didn't live up to the commitment. So I just wish Mr. Smith was still with us so I could say, Hal, is 50 years good enough? It's not good enough for me, by the way, Scott. I hope to be there a lot longer.
Well, I certainly hope so too, and it's it's a very good comfort to me to turn on the Grand Ole Opry and see artists like yourself and Bill Anderson and people that have been there for so long and carrying on the tradition. And there's obviously you need new artists to keep it going, but it's so good to see so many of the legends that are still there and performing on the Opry.
Well, that's what's so unique about the Grand Ole Opry, or one of the things that's unique about it. It occurred to me one day that it's one of the very few sources of entertainment where you will see three generations on the stage and three generations in the audience. That just doesn't happen in very many places. I would say probably theater would be the only other avenue where you might see that, and that would be just a handful of people, where that's a consistent thing at the Opry. And I think that there's room for everybody. It's not only a tradition there, but there's room for all of us there. And I think the Opry is doing a really pretty good job of trying to keep that balance. I know some people don't share that opinion and think maybe it's a little more one-sided, and some nights it probably is. But a lot of times artists are on the road, so that accounts for some of it. I think people like Bill and me take very seriously our role in trying to carry that tradition forward. And I try very hard, I know when I'm talking to new artists, to not only emphasize the thrill but the importance of the Opry as an American institution that needs to be continued. Those before me have kept it for 90 years now. I would hate to see anybody not carry that forward.
Absolutely. Well, there's a very strong camaraderie with yourself and Jan Howard and Connie Smith, the grand ladies of the Grand Ole Opry, I call them. And I had read that you were the first female country singer to host half-hour segments of the Opry back in 1985.
Yeah, the first time I ever hosted was, I was thinking it was 81, maybe it was 85, I can't remember. But there was a snowstorm here, and I was the only Opry artist in the building. In fact, Hal Durham was a manager at that time, and he was on the highway trying to get there as well. So that was totally an accident. But then it was after, and Hal Durham wouldn't change it. That was a door that I knocked on constantly. I should say kicked on constantly, because it just seemed ridiculous to me that women were not allowed to host the Grand Ole Opry just because we were female. It didn't make any sense. But Hal always looked at it as that was tradition. I used to jokingly say, yeah, but it sure smells like discrimination. But anyway, it wasn't until Bob Whitaker took over as manager, and of course the minute he came in, I did my usual make an appointment with the manager and bring the subject up. And Bob he had been the manager of Opryland Park, and he was used to at least half of the roles out there were females. Everybody had their own mic and their own say-so. He wasn't even aware that that didn't happen at the Grand Ole Opry. So he finally said, I'll tell you what, Celie, I'm going to throw you out there. But he said, you better be prepared, and you better do the job, because he said, we'll both be in trouble. And I've always done my homework, because I realized that if I didn't do the job well, then the door would not only be closed on me, but it would be closed on all of the other female artists coming up, and I just didn't think that was right.
Absolutely. Well, you obviously did a very good job, because you're still hosting it today, and that's a wonderful thing.
Yeah. I have fun with it. I always try to go by their dressing rooms and meet up with the new artists that come in before I introduce them on stage, just to help me feel a little more familiar with them and make them feel a little more comfortable. And I'm having a great time with them.
That brings up an interesting question. You're doing this for these new artists that are coming on the Opry for the first time. Who did that for you when you performed on the Opry for the first time?
I think that Ernest Tubb was one who was very encouraging to me. Roy Acuff really was. Of course, Mr. Acuff probably wouldn't have been happy about the hosting, because he didn't really think that women should step out. I stopped short of calling him chauvinistic, but it was just the era that he was from. He felt like that took away from us being treated like a lady, which that has nothing to do with it in my mind. But I respected his position on it. But he was very welcoming to me. And Ernest, of course, gave me a lot of advice about it. And one thing Ernest told me that always stuck in my mind, he said, always look at the lineup on the show and look at the music that's being played. He said, he and Porter Wagner was another one that stressed this, because he said, if I remember Porter saying, man, if there's been 2 or 3 ballads, then you do something up tempo. Don't put those people to sleep out there. But Ernest would say, just remember, when you're on the road out there, that's your show. But when you come into the Grand Ole Opry, you're just part of this one.
Mm-hmm.
And that just kind of emphasized the respect, I think, for the Opry, too, as an overall show. And I still watch that lineup. And because we have so much diversity there now, but if there's another artist on that segment who does Western swing, then I'll probably do something a little bit more Southern rock on my up-tempo things. Or if there's a bluegrass and a solid 2/4 shuffle country act, then I may do more of a pop-flavored ballad to balance the show out.
Mm-hmm.
I very much still follow that protocol.
Well, the several years ago, the flood there in Nashville, it almost destroyed the Grand Ole Opry, and it destroyed your home. Tell me a little bit about that whole experience.
Well, it was devastating at the time. We came through it on both accounts. Yeah, I felt like I lost 2 homes in that flood. But I learned a lot of things that, number one, as far as your memorabilia, take better care of it. Make sure it's in a safe place. And a lot of mine, I kind of had thought I had it in a safe place. I had it in storage cases and in file cabinets in my basement, but I realize now that it wasn't. So everything now, my friend Ron Harmon that just stopped by, I mentioned to you earlier, that does my website and so much stuff, has a storage place, and all of my memorabilia he's going to inherit anyway, so everything I get now I pass on to him. But I think that was one hard lesson I learned, that if that means that much to you, which all of it does, then you need to make sure that it's safe, so it's all in a controlled environment now. And also I realized that a lot of things don't matter. Mm-hmm. Things that at my home, and they truly are just things, and it's just stuff. I jokingly said, since the water was 3 foot high all through my house, and everything had to be torn out and replaced. If it was going to do that, I just wish it would have gone on up and cleared out the attic. That was the place I cleaned out. But anyway, that, and on the back side of it, the Opry House has been restored so beautifully that it is really more uptown and classy than it was before. So we can truly be proud of that Opry House. I don't care what kind of a touring company would come to perform there. We've got certainly a state-of-the-art, classy place to show off. I'm very proud of that. And also at my home, I had found a little cottage on the bank of the river back in 1990 that was uninhabitable. So I rebuilt it at that point. But I had, not knowing what I was doing, I had made some mistakes. So the flood just kind of gave me a second chance to fix my first mistake. So we were able to make some changes here that made it better too. So all in all, we came through it. We're stronger and we're better because of it. Of course, I jokingly said, I'd tell the audience, I said, people are so kind. And I said, people came up to me immediately after the flood and said, Jeannie, what do you need right now? And I said, Botox. The audience just cracked up. I said, can you believe FEMA won't pay for Botox?
I love it.
So we got some good comedy material out of it too, Scott.
Well, that's traditional form for the Grand Ole Opry. Is you make the best out of it, and I was glad they were able to save the circle too. That was really cool when they put that back in.
Uh-huh.
Absolutely. Well, that's great. Well, I want to talk to before we get into the talking about the new album. I wanted to ask you a couple things about some of your music from back when, and I really would love to hear the story of "Don't Touch Me" and how that came along. I know your husband at that time, Hank Cochran, wrote the song, and tell me a little bit about how that song came to be the monster hit that it was.
Well, Fred Foster, we had gone to Fred Foster at Monument, and he finally said, okay, find me the song, and we'll go in and record. So Hank and I had started looking, going through song after song, as you do. And Hank finally said to me one time, what do you want to sing? And I said, well, I'd like to have a ballad, and I'd like for it to give me room to sing the way I feel. And I'd like the song to be able to reach anybody, whether you're male or female, young or old, married or single. You could identify. And he thought that was quite an order, and I reminded him he was supposed to be a hit songwriter, so you should be able to do that. But I was on the road with Porter, and we were heading to Rochester, New York for a show. Excuse me. And Hank was in Indianapolis with some guys doing something. I don't know what they were doing up there. Anyway, something was said, and it gave him the idea for that, and he had the first verse. So he called me and said, "What?" and sang it, what he had, and he said, "What do you think?" And I said, "I like it." I thought the first line just reaches out and grabs you and gets your attention, I think.
Yes, it does.
And so anyway, he flew. Back then, you know, you could grab a flight at the last minute and go anywhere you wanted to go. So he grabbed a flight and flew to Rochester, New York, and actually finished writing the song in my dressing room. By the time we got to the bridge, Hank had been into the Scotch bottle pretty deep, and he wasn't doing very well with the guitar. I couldn't understand what he was saying. So I took the guitar and I would say, "Is this what you mean to do?" And also, I kind of more or less wrote the bridge of it. And but the next day, he called my room and he said, "I think I wrote a smash last night." He said, "Tell me you remember it." Oh yeah, I remember it because I loved it, and I feel very fortunate that I got that song because there were several artists that wanted the song immediately that were strong at the time, you know. But Hank said, "No, I wrote it for Jeannie. It's going to be her first session." So.
Wow.
And the other interesting thing, you know, back then, of course, now I still record this way. I like to go in. I want all the musicians in there, and I like to sing it at the time. It's the way we did by New One. But that's the way we always did it back then. And we actually did 3 takes on the song, but the record was the very first take that we did.
Is that right? Wow.
Yeah, Fred went back. He said, "No, it was there the first time. You start perfecting it, and you lose the emotion."
Yeah, you know, I'll tell you what, Fred Foster was a visionary when it came to producing albums, and I was absolutely blown away with the final album that he produced for Ray Price. And I'll tell you what, he just got the emotion out of Ray Price that was a stellar career album for him.
Yeah, I agree with you too. I talked to Fred the other day. Of course, I'm so grateful that he's going into the Hall of Fame.
Amen. Well deserved. Well deserved. Well, that you touched on an interesting point about "Don't Touch Me," and it certainly you know it appeals to a man and a woman. George Jones recorded that song about maybe 20 years ago or so, and I was curious what your opinion was of his cover of that song.
Well, I liked all of them. Don Gibson did it, Ray Price did it, and they all had, just because they are artists, that's what makes them artists. Each one of them approached it just a little bit different from each other, and certainly different than mine. But I thought they were all great records, and Yeah, as it's been said many times, a great song can be done anyway. You can do a pop record from a good country song which has been proven over and over. You just got to have a good song, period.
Well, absolutely. Well, I'll tell you though, it's no matter how many times you hear someone else do it, it's if you aren't listening to Jeannie Seeley doing it, you're not hearing it the best way. There.
Well, you're very nice. That's what Don Gibson said. I truly believe that there's usually one, even with the artists who've had hit after hit after hit, there's usually one that just somehow it's a perfect marriage between the song and the artist.
You're right. You're absolutely right. Well, there was a long list of wonderful duets in country music, and of course, you and Jack Green are in that list, and you guys had some wonderful songs. Of course, there was "We Don't Want the World" and "Wish I Didn't Have to Miss You." And tell me a little bit about working with Jack Green over the years.
Well, I was so proud. We had a show together for 11 years, and I was always very proud of the show we had during that time. We did some things a little bit different, and Jack and I were one of the first acts to take country music into like dinner theaters and some of those places, because we changed the show up from the normal country format, and we did a little bit of everything. Always tried to do something that would please everybody in the audience, which I still try to do, one of every kind of song in my show. But, the trend always was the female would open the show, and then the male would come out and do his part, and then he'd call her back to do duets. And that's the way we started out doing it. But after I saw the Collins kids perform one time, I realized how the impact that had on me when they hit that stage with the band right at the top of the show. Of course, they were only a duet, but it just hit me, and I thought, I wonder how that would be if Jack and I did that. So we tried that format, and it worked really well for us. That way, you're utilizing all of the talent that you've got available to you for the entire performance. We would hit the stage with a group thing like Fox on the Run or something like that, real up-tempo, where there'd be two guys in the band and Jack and me all singing at one time. And then we would, as Jack would be featured, I would still be singing harmony, background vocals for him. When we featured me, Jack would be singing background harmonies with the guys behind me. And then, of course, we did the duet things and always finished with a very strong ending. So that format worked really different for us, and it was different than everybody else, and it worked very successfully for us.
Well, I would certainly say so. You guys won a lot of awards, and you had some fantastic albums. And I saw the Rope Entertainer show just shortly before Jack passed away, and you were out there kind of helping him with his songs a little bit, singing harmony with him, and I could tell that the friendship and all those years, you guys looked at each other, that was all still there.
Yeah, the respect, and I feel like I've always felt good that I was able to be there and help Jack perform a little bit longer than maybe he would have been able to otherwise, and it was a gift for the fans to be able to see him just as long, and certainly I count myself among those that I was able to be there with him as long as we could.
Absolutely.
And that was, I've always heard that the music is the last thing to go, and that was so amazing with Jack. It was like the greatest gift that God gave him, he let him have the longest.
You bet. I was blessed. The first time that I went to the Grand Ole Opry, was in 1988. And we went to see a matinee performance, and we had gotten there just a little bit late, and the show had started, and I walked in the doors, and I heard Jack Green's voice singing "There Goes My Everything," and I'll tell you what,
Welcome to.
you talk about goosebumps on goosebumps.
Right.
Man, I'll never forget
Right.
that.
Well, were you at the rope show by any chance last year when Tim Atwood and I did the show?
I wasn't there, but I saw some wonderful video. I'm friends with Tim on Facebook, and I saw some of the wonderful video that he posted of you guys, and I'll tell you what, that was fabulous.
That's a new thing we've been doing. A lot of the artists are doing acoustic shows, and it allows you to go into some of the smaller venues that maybe couldn't afford, the full big show. So it helps you to reach more people, and I love that intimate evening setting.
You bet.
And so, but people had called me about doing an acoustic, and I don't feel comfortable working with just a guitar, but I do with the baby grand piano. So I called Tim and I said, let's start doing some things, because we've been friends for over 40 years, and of course worked together at the Opry. So we're having a really good time doing some of those shows, and Tim and Roxanne and Jean and I laugh all the way to wherever we're going.
They're great people. Well, folks, I should tell you, Jeannie Seeley's website is jeannieseeley.com, and of course you can go there and pick up Jeannie's music and find out where she's going to be. She's been doing a lot of great shows here lately, the ones with Tim Atwood, of course, and you've been doing some shows with David Frizzell here lately, and another guy that I absolutely love.
T.G. Shepard.
T.G. Shepard, yeah. T.G. Shepard was one of the greatest interviews I think I ever did. I had such a blast talking to him. What a wonderful man he is.
He is a hoot, a total hoot to be with. Also I have a Facebook page, and I get people saying all the time, you have too many, it won't let me be friends, but there is a Jeannie Seeley artist Facebook page also, and we try to post basically the same thing on both pages. I might not bore the fan page quite as much with my grandchildren's pictures.
Well, I like that on your website. I was, reading the blog that you put on there, and I love that. It's a lot of people that, they send out at Christmas time, they'll send a letter of what's happened in the last year, and it kind of reminds me of that. It kind of catches everybody up, and I think that's nice that you take time to do that.
I'm trying to do that more often, but here I am already at September and haven't done it again. That just seems to be, I stay so busy through the year, that just seems to be a time when I can sit down and wrap it up,
Yeah, absolutely. And folks, we'll put that information on our Facebook page as well. We'll put the link on there for Jeannie's page, and make sure you go give her a like on Facebook. Well, Jeannie, you have a long line of artists that have recorded songs that you've written. Dottie West, Norma Jean, Tex Williams, Lori Morgan, of course, Jack Green, Connie Smith, Merle Haggard. And you have written a new album, and you've written most of the songs on this album, and I'm so looking forward to hearing it, because I'm recognizing some songs that I'm really glad to see you doing. And I'd like to talk about this wonderful new album called Written in Song.
Yeah, as I say in I did 14 songs that I have written, and we ended up with 14 because, it's like, well, you usually don't do more than 12. Okay, there's 12. Well, but I really want this one on there. And then it's like, whoa, we don't want 13. Let's go ahead and do this one. And I wish that I would have remembered it, because it would have been on there. But I think Ron told me there's 10 members of the Hall of Fame who've recorded my songs. And one of them that I missed was Grandpa Jones recorded one of my songs called Everything I Had Going For Me Is Gone. I would have put it on there if I'd have remembered that.
Oh, yeah.
But as I say in the liner notes, I say these are kind of some of the stories of my life written in song. And I said, however, not all of the stories were my mistakes. I'm a good listener to my friends. So I just write down what they tell me.
Well, that's the way to be. Well, when the album comes out, I hope that you'll take time to come back, and I'd love to do a whole feature on it and play a bunch of the songs and talk about them individually, and because it's
Well, let's just plan that. I'll tell you what I'll do. I will send you an advance copy, and then we will plan what we're going to do, and we'll go ahead and do it when we both have the time.
Well, that's
How's that
great.
sound?
That's perfect. I can't wait to hear it.
And to those of you listening, yeah, sometimes we cheat a little bit.
Well, we want to get this out there, you know.
Yeah, because it's more important to tape it and play it later than it is to not do it at all, is the way I feel about things. And
that's right.
sometimes it's hard to get back together again, but I just appreciate so much you letting me talk about my career and this new project coming up, because I am so proud of it. I even included the very first song I ever had recorded back in 1963 when I was 23 years old. I tell my age, but I tell the audience all the time. I said, I tell you that up front so you won't interrupt my show by searching on your phone to figure out how old I am.
What song was that, Jeannie?
Anyone who knows what love is. I was working as a secretary at Liberty Imperial Records in L.A., and I'd stayed after work to use the piano because I didn't have one at my apartment. And so Eddie Ray was one of the producers there at the time, and he was working late. The next day at the A&R meeting, he called me in to sing the song. Irma Thomas, who was a R&B legend in New Orleans, was recording for Imperial at that time, and they were looking for songs for her. So she recorded. She had like I think it was a top 5 R&B record on it, and it went. It was in the top 15 in what we called the top 40 charts back then. Mm-hmm. So my first, as a country singer-songwriter, my very first recorded of one of my songs did not get recorded in country field.
I'll be darned. Well, that's cool. Well, now it's going to be on this new album, so that'll be fantastic.
Right. Mm-hmm. And there's songs, Merle Haggard did 2 of my songs. They're on there. And, of course, I recut Leaving and Saying Goodbye, which is one of my best-known copyrights.
Yeah.
And we did something a little different, and I'm not going to tell them. We'll save that story till we talk about the new CD.
All right.
But I appreciate hearing from everybody, too. Tell everybody that they can contact me, like I said, through the Jeannie Seely Artist Facebook page, JeannieSeely.com website, or you can always write to me, to Jeannie Seely in care of the Grand Ole Opry, Nashville, Tennessee. They know where we are.
Just like the FBI, they know where you are.
Yeah.
Well, that's wonderful. Jeannie, we're so looking forward to the new album, and I'll look forward to having you back on and doing a feature on it. And I want to thank you for taking time. It's a very humbling experience for me to have this one-on-one time to talk to somebody of your stature and hear about your wonderful stories. And I just absolutely have always been a fan, and I'm just tickled to death that you took time to be on My Kind of Country.
Well, it was giving me a good break. I'm in there being frustrated, trying to figure out how to pack a suitcase to go to Ohio, and just realized that I'm going to need a raincoat. That didn't make me feel real good. You gave me a good break today, Scott, and I thank you so much for being on your show.
Well, bless your heart. It's been an honor. We're going to go back and play Don't Touch Me right now. And Jeannie Seely, thank you again. And folks, again, we'll put that information on our Facebook page, JeannieSeely.com, and look for this wonderful album, Written in Song, to be coming out early next year and in celebration of Jeannie's 50 years on the Grand Ole Opry. Jeannie Seely, thanks for being on My Kind of Country.
Thank you, Scott.